GPT-5, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, and Grok. 5 models, 5 fan bases, 5 completely different answers to the same question. Who's winning? Now here's the actual answer. It's completely dependent on what you're doing. If you're a developer, a creator, a student, running a business, the AI you choose literally changes how fast you move, how good your work is, and how burnt out you feel by the end of the day. You get it wrong, AI just becomes a slightly smarter Google. You get it right, and it feels like you've hired a whole team. In this video, I'm going to break down who actually leads in raw intelligence and benchmarks, where GPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, and Grok each secretly shine, and how to build your own AI stack instead of arguing over which logo is the best. By the end, you will know which AI to use for what. Now, before diving in, it helps to understand who the players are. There's 5 major forces that dominate the space right now. Obviously, everybody knows them. You got OpenAI, Anthropic, Perplexity, and xAI, and Google Gemini, of course. The critical thing to understand is that they aren't competing for the same crown. One has staked out distinct territory. ChatGPT, for example, is chasing the universal brain, one model that can reason, write, code, and orchestrate tools across multiple domains. And then you have Claude Code. Claude has planted its flag on depth and precision, optimizing for rigorous thinking, safety, and coding. Gemini is building for breadth within the Google ecosystem, natively understanding all text, images, video, code, and documents in one pass. Perplexity isn't really a model at all. It's more of like a conductor. It routes queries across multiple models by pulling live web results and citing every source. And then Grok is just taking the raw power angle. The massive model that's directly entangled in X, giving it real-time pulse on what the world is talking about at this very moment. See, it's the same category, but completely different bet. So when people ask who's the best, they're really mixing up 5 different questions. Who's the best reasoner? Who's the best coder? Who's the best multi-model stuff like images and video? Who's the best at live information? And who's the best at orchestrating them all? That's exactly what we're answering. If I'm building a product, I lean in with Claude to live in my repo all day, every day. I use ChatGPT when I need to think through architecture, specs, and edge cases, and I use Perplexity when I need to explore new tools, read docs, or do some more research. Now let's do a complete 180 and talk about what you would be doing if you're writing scripts, articles, doing schoolwork, or running deep research for a product. All your priorities change when it comes to that. You want long, coherent answers. You want to understand the articles, the PDFs, and maybe even the video. You don't want to spend all day fact-checking hallucinations. ChatGPT 5 is the default super brain in my opinion. It's fast, good at long-form content, and great at brainstorming, outline, rewriting, and explaining the complex topic. Claude shines when you want depth and caution, digesting huge documents, summarizing the long conversations, or reasoning carefully about tricky topics. Gemini is your multimedia nerd. You drop in the images, your slides, maybe a video transcript, and it's comfortable juggling formats, especially if you already live in Google Docs slides. And Perplexity is the researcher who never really leaves your side. It automatically pulls in live web pages, shows you citations that you could run longer deep dives where it clicks, reads, and synthesizes multiple sources for you. Grok is the one you ask what's happening today around this topic. It's wired directly into X, so it's uniquely good for trend spotting, live reactions, and the current state of the particular conversation you're in. So if I'm scripting a video like this one, I'd use Perplexity to do the research, get fresh sources, and map the landscape. I'd use GPT to turn that into a tight outline and first draft, and then I'd use Claude to stress test the arguments and help with the nuance. And lastly, I'd use Gemini to bring in the images, the charts, and Google-based docs and slides. That's not one best model, that's just a pipeline, that's a stack. Now, if you're running a business or you're a founder or team lead, your questions are, will this save my team time? Can I trust it with sensitive data? And does pricing integration make sense at scale? In that world, GPT is the big general purpose engine with strong enterprise offerings and great tooling. Claude is the careful advisor you bring in for policy, legal summaries, and complex reasoning that you don't want hallucinated. Gemini becomes incredibly attractive if your whole organization lives in Google Workspace and the cloud. It's already inside the tools your team uses all day. Perplexity acts like an AI research and knowledge layer for your whole company. People can ask, how do other companies solve X? And get web-grounded answers with sources, not just vibes. And lastly, you have Grok. Grok is interesting for any business that cares about live sentiment, trending topics, or being early to what people are talking about on X. For a business, the best AI isn't who wins a benchmark, it's which combo of these quietly turns my team into a force multiplier without causing chaos. That's why there's more and more teams quietly using several of them behind the scenes. Once you start looking at all these models this way, the question really changes from which AI is the best to what is the right stack for me. Let me give you a simple and honest cheat sheet. If I was going to start over, this is a stack that I would recommend, and it's completely dependent on who you are. If I was a developer, Cloud would be my main coding and deep reasoning partner. GPT would be a fast architect, brainstormer, and spec writer. Perplexity would be my researcher, and an optional one would be Gemini for cloud and doc stuff. I wouldn't really use Grok unless I was looking for anything that was trending. If you're a creator or student, I would use Perplexity for research and gather resources, GPT for the outline, Claude to refine, Gemini for anything heavy on images or video, and Grok when you want to know what's going on. If you're running a business, hands down it's going to be GPT or Gemini, really dependent on what your ecosystem is already using. Claude would be your primary brain depending on the type of work that you're doing. I would use Perplexity as a live knowledge and research layer so your team can query with citations. You could also experiment with Grok for monitoring real-time sentiment on the markets and trends on X. The key takeaway from this is, in 2023, the game was pick a chatbot. In 2026, it's design a system. You don't need one model that's perfect at everything. You need a small team of models that each do their very best. You stitch them together and you show how you could turn your actual workflow into something that's a little bit more efficient rather than holding you back. So at the end of the day, who is the best AI model? Honestly, none of them. Claude is probably the strongest pure coder for a lot of devs, but GPT feels like the best all-around brain for general reasoning and content. Gemini is insane with multi-model and Google native workflows, and Perplexity is becoming one of the best orchestrators of all of them. Grok is the wild card, right? It's wired into the internet's literal bloodstream. So at the end of the day, no one really knows. The real flex isn't saying, I'm team GPT or I'm team Claude. It's being the person who knows when to send a problem to GPT, when to hand it to Claude, when to give it to Gemini or fire up Perplexity, and when to ask Grok, what does the world care about? So tell me in the comments, what's your main use case? Code, content, school, business? And which model actually feels the best for you right now? If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Hit that bell button so you know when the next one drops. And lastly, thanks for watching. Until next time, do more, never give up, and always stay humble.